In this movie, we'll investigate the relationship between a placed image and its bounding box, which allows you to either scale an image or crop it. It's a little confusing, however, and it doesn't provide you with an awful lot of control, but I do want you to know it's an option. And then in the next movie, I'll show you my preferred method for cropping images that involves a clipping mask. So I'm going to go ahead and select the image by clicking on it. And then I'll go up to the View menu and choose Show Bounding Box, or press Control-Shift-B or Command-Shift-B on a Mac in order to turn the bounding box on. Now let's say I just decide to drag this bottom right corner handle in order to squish the image like so. So I didn't press the Shift key or anything like that. I just went ahead and allowed the image to scale to any old proportions. I'm going to move it down and to the right just a little bit here. You have other options available to you. And to get to them, you click on the image file name, second over up here in the control panel, and then you choose the placement options command. And notice that by default, preserve is set to transforms. In other words, the image will be scaled along with the bounding box. You can change it to bounds. That only affects the image if you decide to relink to it. So if you relink to an image with a different physical size, then it comes in differently without all the non-proportional transforms. That really doesn't apply in our case, and I think it's a little bit obscure. What if you'd rather go ahead and retain the original proportions of the image, but scale it along with the bounding box nonetheless? Well, one option is to choose Proportions Fill, which is going to more than fill the bounding box with the image. So I'll go ahead and click OK, and you'll see that we get the original proportions of the image like so. However, it is scaled within, in our case, the width of the bounding box. Now notice that we kind of have two bounding boxes. I think this is extremely confusing. We have the old one we created just a moment ago, which we don't really have control over. Even though we're seeing these little corner handles, if you drag them, you just go ahead and move the image to a different location. Whereas if you drag your big corner handles, then you're going to actually change the physical size of your image like so. You're also going to scale that old bounding box there in the center. Now, the thing about the old bounding box is it defines the area in which you need to click to select the image. So as long as you click or drag inside the area with the Inset X, then you're going to select the photograph. However, if you click outside the area with the Inset X, then you'll end up selecting what's ever in back of the photograph, in my case, the gray rectangle. So that, I think, can be very confusing as you're working with images that have scaled bounding boxes. I'll go ahead and click inside the X area again to select the image. Then I'll click on the image file name, choose Placement Options, and I'll go ahead and switch from Proportions Fill to Proportions Fit. And what that does is it goes ahead and fits the image entirely within this old bounding box, if you will. I'll go ahead and click OK, and you'll see now the image is on the inside. And the good news is now the image is much easier to select, because if you click anywhere inside of it, you're definitely going to select the image. However, notice if I click outside the image to deselect it, and then I click over here where the image is not, I end up selecting it because I once again clicked in the area with the Inset X. Anyway, I'll go ahead and increase the size of my bounding box a little, so that change is not nearly so dramatic. All right, so you can also use the bounding box for cropping purposes. And there's two ways to achieve that. They both involve clicking on the image file name and choosing Placement Options in order to bring up the Placement Options dialog box. When you have either Proportions Fill selected, or if you select File Dimensions, which is going to restore the original size of the image, then you can turn on this Clip to Bounding Box checkbox, in which case you will end up cropping using the bounding box. And so the best way to see what's going on there is to set Preserve to File Dimensions, then turn on the Clip checkbox, click OK, and you'll see that we end up now cropping the artwork. Problem is, and this is a big problem, you can't drag the artwork inside of the bounding box. They are linked together, so you can't sort of just scoot the artwork around, which is, of course, what you'd want to do. And if you do want to change the positioning, you have some limited controls. You click on the file name, choose Placement Options, and what you do is you change these alignment settings. So for example, let's say I want to crop away the bottom right portion of my photograph. I would go ahead and align the photo to the top left corner of the bounding box and click OK, and we'd end up with this effect here. If I want to center things a little bit horizontally, it's kind of messed up, but I'd select Placement Options once again, and instead of selecting this top center point, I'd select this left-hand center point and then click OK. And you can see that that ends up moving the Tyrannosaurus over a little bit, and it begins to reveal the Triceratops. So things are a little wonky, but you can sort of get what you want. So that's how you scale and crop using the bounding box inside of Illustrator. In the next movie, I'll show you a much better way to crop using a clipping mask.